everyone, our group built a sentiment-based stock signal tool. The idea is simple. Instead of guessing how the market feels about a stock, we let AI read the news for us and generate a signal. Bullish, bearish, or neutral based on real headlines. We use 4 technologies to make it work. Finbert as our AI brain, News API to pull live headlines, Yahoo Finance for stock price context, and Gradio to build the interface. I'll be covering the background today. What is Finbert, why we chose it, and what you can expect from the rest of the presentation. Here's what we'll cover today. I'll handle the first 3 sections, the background on Finbert, our motivation for choosing it, and the system architecture. From there, my teammates will walk you through a live demo, our accuracy results, and honest pros and cons in our next steps. We have lots to show you, so let's jump in. Finbert starts with BERT, Google's 2018 deep learning model that reads text in both directions at once, giving it a much stronger grasp of context and meaning than earlier models. Before BERT, most models only read left to right, which meant they often missed the full meaning of a sentence. Finbert takes that foundation and fine-tunes it on roughly 10,000 financial sentences from Reuters articles, analysis reports, and earning calls. That domain-specific training is what makes it valuable and actually understands financial language, not just general English. It knows the difference between languages, signals good news for stocks versus bad news, even when the wording is subtle. The output is a 3-class probability score: positive, negative, and neutral. And because it returns probabilities rather than just labels, we can build a nuanced composite signal with real confidence levels, which is exactly what powers the bullish-bearish threshold. Compare that to the VADAR, the base standard of sentiment analysis. VADAR is a rule-based belt for general text like the social media, and hits about 65% accuracy on financial headlines. It has also no contextual understanding and can't tell us whether a headline is good or bad news based on the situation around it. Finbert benchmarks at 85%, and as you'll see shortly, we actually exceeded that in our own testing. That gap is what made Finbert the clear choice for this project.
Most sentiment tools are built for generalized tools product reviews, but financial language is very different. A phrase like cursor restructuring announces sounds natural on the surface, but in finance it almost always signal layoffs or declining margins. It's negative. General purpose models miss that. The Finbert was fine-tuned specifically on the financial text, returns articles, analyst reports, earnings calls, which gives it around 85% accuracy on the financial headlines, compared to about 65% for the reader. That's a significant gap. It also fits perfectly with the modular system. We didn't treat anything from scratch. No GPU, no labeled datasets. We just call a pre-trained model through the Hugging Face API in about 10 lines of the code. That's exactly what the model APIs are about. The state of the art, performance without the overhead of building it yourself. Here's how the full system comes together left to right. The user enters a stock ticker and the company name. News API fetches the most recent headlines. Each headline goes into Finbert, which returns probability scores for the positive, negative, and neutral. The Yahoo Finance adds the current price context. Then our aggregate combines everything into a single signal. Bullish, bearish, or the neutral, and the gradual display is all in an interactive interface inside the collab. The key thing here is that the Finbert is the engineer. Everything else is just the proving around it. I will pass it over to the carry, who will walk you through the setup and run the live demo.
There are multiple key technologies that were used for this project. The packages that we installed are the following. First, Transformers, which loads the Finbert model. Second, Torch from PyTorch, which is the deep learning backend. Third, the News API, which is the real-time financial news headlines. Fourth, Y Finance, which is from Yahoo Finance and fetches the live stock price and historical data. And finally, Gradio, which builds the interactive web interface in Colab. How does our project work? First, we input a stock ticker. In the example that follows, we use the stock Apple and the company name, Apple, in the interface. Second, News API retrieves the number of most recent headlines mentioning the company, and you can change the number of headlines. In this case, the default was 10 headlines. Third, Finbert scores each headline and returns it as either positive, negative, or neutral. Fourth, the score, which is the average positive minus the average negative times 100, then determines whether something is considered bullish, i.e. is something that maybe is worth considering to buy, versus something that is bearish and perhaps is something that should not be bought or should be sold. Finally, the results are displayed in the interface where it shows the signal, the price data, the sentiment breakdown, and the per headline table. Here's an example of our sentiment-based stock signal tool. On the left, you input the stock ticker symbol and the company name. You then choose the number of headlines you want to look at, whether that's the lowest of 5 or up to 20. The default is set at 10. Then you click Analyze. Using Finbert's classification, the scores are then aggregated and a bullish, bearish, or neutral signal appears based on recent headline sentiments. Further down the website, we see how the individual headline results influence the final ultimate decision. So we can see in this that there were 4 headlines that were analyzed, 2 were considered positive and 2 were neutral. Eventually, when the calculation determined the input of each of these, it was determined that this would be a bullish stock because the positive and neutral together created a positive sentiment.
Our fine-tuned model achieved a 95% accuracy on a hand-labeled test set of 20 financial headlines. Our fine-tuned model achieved a 95% accuracy on a hand-labeled test set of 20 financial headlines. This outperformed Finbert's benchmark of 85% and Vader's baseline of 65%. Negative sentiment was classified perfectly with only one misclassification, an NVIDIA AI chip headline, which was scored as neutral instead of positive. This is a known limitation of Finbert's model, since product announcements lack explicit financial metrics. This can be addressed in production with richer input or in a fine-tuned model for this specific issue. So on the upside, our model has a high accuracy compared to the widely available models like Finbert and Vader. It also requires zero custom training, since we're leveraging the pre-trained model through Hugging Face API, which means that there's no GPU needed, no label training data, and no model building from scratch. Also, the model doesn't just return labels, it returns probability scores for each class. This means instead of giving a binary positive or negative flag, it returns a confidence level, which is a more nuanced signal for scoring for later use. Finally, this model is beneficial because it's built into an end-to-end pipeline. The news fetching, NLP classification, price data, and the UI are all integrated in the Collab notebook. So there will be no need for using separate tools or environments to have everything in one place. Together, these four concepts make this model practical, deployable, and an actual solution that could be used in the future, not just proof of concept. At the same time, this model comes with limitations. Finbert is designed for short text. It's designed to work only at headlines level. Therefore, analyzing full articles would need more complex text analysis that it's not included or implemented in our model. We're also constrained by News API. Because we're using the free tier, it only limits us to 100 requests per day, which is about 20 headlines per call. And this makes it difficult to create real-time scalability. There's also the signal flag, because markets frequently move before headlines are published. So sentiment is very reactive by nature, and this model might not act as fast as needed. And finally, the first run carries a cold start cost, downloading roughly 500 megabytes of model weights, though that's cached on subsequent nodes. These are known trade-offs, so not deal breaking, but it's important to know this context for any production use.
Okay, so let's go through what worked and where we hit frictions. On the win side, Finbert loaded and ran as documented and unclaps free CPU tier at about half a second per headline. News API pulls relevant headlines across every company we tested, such as Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, quite reliably. Gradio rendered cleanly and gave us the working public share URL. And Yahoo Finance pulled price data for every ticker we tried, and end-to-end fetch, sentiment, price, render. A full run took about 8 to 12 seconds for 10 headlines, which is fine for an on-demand tool. On the friction side, News API's free tier caps us about 100 requests a day, and we actually hit that limit twice during testing, which meant we have to wait 24 hours before we can keep going. Finbert also missed one headline in our accuracy test. An NVIDIA chip announcement with the phrase shares expected to rise and predicted neutral instead of positive. That's a known pattern with the model. Forward-looking language and product announcements without hard financial numbers tend to get scored as neutral. Since Finbert was mainly trained on backward-looking earning and market news, which means the tool is entirely on demand. There's no background monitoring. So 3 takeaways. First, a domain-specific models API like Finbert clearly beats a general-purpose tool. We measure 95% accuracy and versus 65% for VADA on the same 20 headlines. Second, you get that performance without training anything yourself. The whole model integration was about 10 lines of code through Hugging Face. Third, we prove this works as a real reproducible pipeline. News API, Finbert, Yahoo Finance, and Gradio, all running together in one collab notebook that any classmates can rerun with their own API key. For next steps, our report lays out a few directions, analyzing full article bodies instead of just headlines, backtesting the sentiment signal against actual historical price moves to see if it's predictive, adding schedule alerts instead of on-demand only analysis, and pulling in more sources like Reddit or SEC filings for broader coverage. That's our project. Thank you.